Good evening, everyone. I'm Damian Johnson. I'm Assistant Superintendent in the School District of Springfield Township. I want to welcome you to our meeting of the Academic Affairs Committee for the Board of School Directors. It's Friday. Nope, it's not Friday. It is Tuesday, February 6th. The F sound threw me off. It's 5 o'clock and this is a virtual meeting and I appreciate you all being here. Ms. Green, I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for joining us. Can I assume that you are serving as chair of our committee?
Certainly.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and keep going if that's all right with you. Here's our agenda. We will tonight start with welcome and introductions because we have some new members of our Board of School Directors who are joining the committee. I want to make sure our student representatives are acknowledged and then our building principals and Dr. Lutz are here as well. Our principals are here this afternoon to talk about mid-year performance updates towards our action plan and academic achievement. Dr. Lutz is here to speak about the Act 339 counseling plan as required under Pennsylvania expectations. I have some brief updates on curriculum projects and an exciting opportunity of what we're going to talk about in March. I want to give you a little preview of that. I was looking for a word. I want to talk about when we'll hold our next meeting and then be open to any public comment should there be any. Okay. I would like to start with some introductions. Dr. Yannicone is here with us, our superintendent of schools. Do you want to say anything to get us started?
No, thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. Just welcome everyone.
Awesome. Glad to have everybody here. Our building principals are here. Chuck Rittenhouse represents our high school. Zach Fuller is here from the middle school. Ben Spiker's here from Erdenheim. Megan Markle is here from Enfield. Dr. Lutz is here. She's the Director of Support Services. Carla Green serves as the chair of our committee. Amy Hubley is another member of our school board. Let's see, Dr. Tara Tusky is here, another member of our school board, and our newest member of our school board and addition to the committee is Eileen Bell. Welcome aboard. And then we have two student representatives who serve on our committee. Ronan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ronan. I'm a junior in the high school, and I'm just very thankful to be here.
Do you want to tell everybody why you asked to join academic affairs or volunteered to participate?
I just really care about the way I guess we are taught and how our academics are run. And so I was just really thankful for the opportunity to be able to be a part of this board.
Thanks very much. Olivia, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about why you wanted to be here?
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Tao, and I'm also a junior at our high school. And yeah, again, I'm also just super honored and grateful to be able to be a part of this and these meetings. And I think it's just really important to have student representatives a part of these so that we can get student input and student opinions and also just have representative of our body at our school.
It's been a real helpful change to, I think, our committee over the last few years to have student representatives. They add insight and perspective that has been instrumental in helping us move forward. And I think they raise interesting questions. In addition, Ronan and Olivia serve on the high school student advisory committee with Dr. Yannicone and Dr. Rittenhouse and I, therefore sort of providing a conduit between this group and our student body. So welcome to both of you. And so I am glad to get us started today. And I am going to quickly turn it over to one of our building principals. I'm going to have Dr. Markle start in 1 second. I'm going to remind the members of our school board that we had our team here in the fall. We reviewed with you at that time sort of our performance data from our fall benchmark assessments and last year's spring testing, and that our building principals worked with their teams to create action plans. So they're here today to sort of provide you, as promised, our mid-year update. Our January benchmarking has been completed. We have our results and we're taking a look at what our next steps are. And so I've invited all of them here to briefly, 5 to 7 minutes worth, catch you up on what their priorities were and sort of what they see moving forward. Dr. Markle, can I kick it off to you?
I'm ready.
All right.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for
allowing me to be here and give some great updates for Enfield Elementary School. Just to remind where our areas of growth and focus were from the fall for Enfield. We wanted to really continue to make sure that we're providing targeted areas of focus for each grade level in the areas of reading and math. And so we do that a couple different ways, but we have 3 check-ins a year where we do benchmark assessments. And part of that information helps us gauge and monitor that our students are making good growth. And then we help to identify areas of strength, but also areas of focus. And in those areas of focus, we want to make sure that we're providing targeted support and interventions in the classroom and also through reading and math specialists as well. And then as we always talked about, early literacy is so important, and especially at that kindergarten level. So we really have an emphasis on making sure that we're instructing on those foundational skills that are so imperative to continue to help them learn how to read and write and progress through first grade and second grade as well. And then overall, just an important focus for Enfield and our school district is just really looking at the achievement and growth of all of our students, but especially also our students who are experiencing economic disadvantage. And so we made sure that we're paying a close attention to a couple different factors. And so I'm happy to report some mid-year updates on the next slide. And so as I presented in the fall, just the action plan, where we wanted to really focus in on some data meetings, some math intervention and interventions and supports. I'm happy to report that our data meetings are going well. We have We've focused really on looking at more classroom and benchmark assessment at grade level meetings that happen weekly. In addition, we also have a larger team that comes together and monthly and looks at data just to continue to make sure that we're monitoring student growth and progress. And so we're happy for that. In January, we took our benchmark assessments, and we take a couple different assessments. One I want to point out, and it's some information that I've reported out to the board in the past, but the STAR is one assessment that we take at kindergarten, first and second grade, and it just tests a couple different reading abilities. And I'm happy to report that from our winter benchmark assessment results that we have in the kindergarten level for the STAR assessment, 85% of our students are scoring at or above the expected benchmark. And for first grade, we have 86% of our students scoring at or above. And then for second grade, we have 85% at or above. And so that really allows us to really look at that 15 or 14% who is not meeting there. And so we make sure that we're providing interventions and small group instruction to a reteaching of skills to make sure that they're going to continue to make the growth and can keep working towards reaching those end of year standards that we want them to reach. One change from last year to this year, this time last year, we implemented a new math benchmark. We use the Math Linkit benchmark assessment for math, but we started last year in the winter. This year, we were able to start in the fall. And so I'm happy to report that we saw a nice increase from the fall to the winter. And now this assessment is assessing how the students are doing towards the end of year math standards. And so we hope and expect to see an increase on the average of scores. And so these percentages that you're seeing for Math Linkit are the increase of the average of scores. So from kindergarten in the fall, the average score that my students were scoring was about 60% on that kindergarten end of year. And they've progressed to about 74% for the average score. And then you'll see from first grade, from the fall of 64% to now scoring on the average score that is 75%. And then second grade, there was a large jump where the average score in the fall was about 56%. And now we've increased that average score to 72%. So the same thing from this data, we were able to really provide and target some students that will qualify for some additional reading and math intervention groups. And I'm happy to report that they started yesterday. They're going very well. The teachers are excited. The kids are excited. The reading specialists and math specialists are excited to get together and get working. So it's really been a great start to what we kind of call our winter benchmark time. Happy to take any questions this group might have.
Comments or questions from the board or our representatives? Nothing? Fantastic. Thanks, Dr. Markle.
Thank you.
As we tend to do here, we're going to go right by the age group, and I'm going to pass it to Mr. Spiker to get us started talking about the performance at Erdenheim.
Everybody. So this will look pretty similar to what Dr. Markle just shared. Slide from the fall, some areas for growth. So both in ELA and math on the PSSA at Erdenheim, we are in the situation where our results have increased in the past few years post-COVID, but they're also not as good as they were pre-pandemic. So we're continuing to want to see the full recovery in our test scores. So we're continuing to focus on what our instructional strategies that is going to work to that continued increase in ELA and math, and then similarly to what Dr. Markle said, and then particular for students who are experiencing economic disadvantage. And then on the next slide, set up similarly to what we just saw with Dr. Markle, that on the left-hand side is that action plan with steps that we looked at in the fall, and then some updates on the right-hand side. So in a little bit out of order, so one of the things that that we're looking at, just like Enfield, we have the middle of the year STAR test, and one of the things that the STAR does nicely is it gives students a growth goal. So so depending on where you are in the fall in math and literacy, on that fall test, it generates an individual goal because different students are expected to make a different amount of growth depending if you're a super high achieving student or a student who maybe is not as advanced. And then we can look at the winter test and say basically how many of our kids have met their growth goal. And what's nice to share is that for all three of our grades, for both reading and math, more students hit their individual growth goal than would be the national average, right? So kids at Erdenheim are making strong progress and are growing faster than you would expect. And that's leading to an increase in overall student achievement, right? Because if kids are making more growth, more students are going to be hitting those achievement goals. So how we got the data was look at the kids in the 50th percentile. And when you combine the scores for all three of our grades, in math, the percentage of kids at that level went from 73% of kids to 78, and then in ELA from 65% of students to 71% of students. So big picture takeaway, kids making more growth than is sort of expected is leading to more kids achieving at higher achievement levels. Some things that we talked about in the fall that we've been able to pull off, similarly to Enfield, really strong work with our intervention programs, or reading specialists or math specialists, looking at the fall data and making intervention groups, as well as our homeroom teachers using that similar data and classroom assessments to also do really strong small group instruction in the classroom. So all students are getting that small group instruction and happening consistently, happen in a strong way, teachers putting a lot of effort in their planning. And then we use the winter data to refine those groups, make some changes to get more targeted. We used a lot of time on our teacher in-service day a couple of weeks ago to do that work, to launch our groups for the second semester. And then a goal we had in the fall that we've been able to pull off is using regular times for all teachers on the grade level to come together, like looking at recent student work. So we're not just looking at spreadsheets, we're not just looking at these big assessments. It's teachers bringing open-ended answers from math, or bringing essays from literacy or response to literature, and sitting at a big table as a group, looking at trends, looking at patterns, where are kids strong, where do kids need more practice, and they're working as a team to make an action plan for how we can move the needle the next time kids are taking that assessment or having that task in front of them. And we've been doing those every month so far this year, and it's been a really positive addition to our work. So a lot of good progress so far, and we're working to keep that up throughout the rest of the year. Any
Thanks,
questions,
Mr.
Ray?
Spiker? Exactly what I was going to say. Any questions from the board or from our committee members for Mr. Spiker?
I have a question.
Dr. Teratowski?
Yeah. So back a slide, you referred to the goals of PSSA scores, right? So I just wanted to ask how the STAR testing, there we go, PSSA ELA, PSSA math. So how the STAR testing results would correlate or predict PSSA performance. What's the, I guess,
Yeah, that's a great
information about
question.
that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So STAR and PSSA, like STAR is a nationwide test, so it's not aligned exactly to the PSSA. But you're right. I think the key word here is correlation, right? So our data, our data partner, our data vendor, Linkit, they have this huge data set of PSSA scores, STAR results, and they're able to see that when kids show progress on STAR, it increases their chance that they're going to do well in the PSSA, and they're actually able to give us projections based on how kids do on STAR, to how they're going to do on the PSSA. So even though they're not the exact same test, we're sort of able to get a pretty accurate understanding of how kids are going to do on the PSSA based on how they do on the STAR.
So given some of this information, I know we're entering into PSSA season, which is so much fun for everyone. What, given some of this information, how do you predict that our students may do?
Yeah, so we actually just got so we were prepping for this with the results we got directly from STAR, because it takes a little bit of time for Linkit then to take that data and then to analyze it. So we actually, I think, just actually got that report this morning. So we haven't had a real chance to dig in, but that is sort of the next step in this work, is to sort of say, what is our updated predictions for how we think we might do when we get to that PSSA test. But generally, right, I'm moving in the right direction. In that report, as we dig into it over the next few days, will give us some more specificity about exactly where we're seeing some growth, or any areas for us to focus on in the next few months.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you.
Our mute button. Anything else from anyone before I move on to the middle school? Thanks, Mr.
Dr. Johnson, sorry.
Yes,
I
Mrs.
just wanted
Hubley.
to say that it's nice to see at the elementary level that everybody's moving in the right direction, and that there's been growth, from K to 5. So I'm glad to see that.
Thanks, Mrs. Hubley.
I just wanted to make a comment about the student work protocol, just using and really drilling down to individually look at student answers and how they're figuring out the answer, and the thoroughness of that, so that teachers can then plan and really instruct on how to give those very thorough answers that are definitely needed for PSSA responses. So I think that that's just an excellent change that you're doing in terms of doing that monthly meeting where teachers are sitting around the table, digging into student work, seeing how they're responding and how to expand those answers, so that they can then repeat that for the PSSAs coming up in a real way. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Mrs. Green. I think one of the things that our administrative team should be really proud of, I hope that they are, but I would like them to be proud of, is we're doing a lot of work in our shared leadership. And so that's carrying over into us as an instructional cabinet, providing leadership in our landscapes, right? So one of the things, and I think this is a nice segue into the middle school, is really working with the teachers to come to really put their cards on the table. What are you looking for? Well, what are you looking for? And what's someone else looking for? And so really trying to norm that experience. So I think it's a great segue into our middle school, where we're doing some of that work too. So I think you'll see that pattern continue, that we're really recognizing that our leadership requires us to get in there at the actual level of student work. And really support our teachers in supporting one another, and opening up that conversation to come to some collegial understandings of what is our best work look like in a grade level or in a course. Dr. Fuller, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Well, I hope that was a good segue into the middle school. I hope I don't disappoint. So our goals, we have very similar goals to the other schools in the district. We're looking at our ELA and math PSSA scores, and we're hoping to strengthen our instructional strategies toward enhanced performances in those two areas. We are also targeting instruction on the open-ended response in both ELA and math. So we're looking at both of those have open-ended responses on the PSSA. So we've targeted our focus working with the rubrics and working with our teachers on open-ended responses. And then like the other two schools, we're looking at our economically disadvantaged cohort to see what sort of progress they're making. So if you want to flip the slide. So at the beginning of the year, we talked about engaging our faculty and staff and utilizing data within their teams. I think we've been very successful at the middle school in bringing data into the conversation among our middle school teachers in a way that we really just haven't been as detailed in terms of our data focus as we have been this year. And so our teams and departments both had the opportunity to take a look at our district goals and building goals this year and create data-driven goals for their departments and teams. So our ELA and math department have actually created a strategy, a number, right, that they want to hit in terms of our recovery toward the high watermark pre-pandemic. And how do we want to relate to that high watermark? We're looking to get back, recoup some growth toward that. And we are also looking at the student work protocol or norming of our grading and discussion around TDA and open-ended responses. Our ELA and math teachers meet every 6 days at the middle school in departments because we use some time during the school day to make that happen during our flex period. And a lot of that time is spent looking at TDA and open-ended responses with our instructional coaches who are leading protocols in those meetings. So I've been happy to understand that that's happening. We have intentional examination of standards after our second Linkit benchmark in ELA and math. Linkit is a new test for us this year. We are using it as our benchmark rather than the STAR test. We found the STAR test at the middle school level to be less predictive and more adaptive in terms of, it did a really nice job of identifying the direction that we need to grow in, but it didn't do a really great job of predicting how our students would perform on the PSSA. The Linkit benchmark assessment is not adaptive. It is grade level specific, and it is against grade level standards. And so we thought it was valuable for our students to take a test against grade level standards, and then, if needed, take the STAR to identify areas of growth. And so that's what we did in the beginning of the school year. We just finished our second administration of our Linkit benchmark assessments. We have seen substantive growth in every category. If you think about ELA and math at the middle school, we have 6 possibilities, right? ELA and math in grades 6, 7, and 8. 2 times 3 equals 6. So we have 6 areas where we could be growing, declining, or staying the same. In 5 of those 6 areas after our benchmark, we've noticed marked improvement, and we've stayed about the same in 8th grade math. So we're looking to dig into that a little bit. We've seen growth in our TDA. We also have TDA benchmarking that we're doing. So with each administration of our Linkit exam, we are delivering a Linkit created cold read TDA, which is a text-dependent analysis piece of writing that our teachers and students have been working on to our students. And what we've seen is the data around that at each grade level move from sort of like a bell-shaped curve into like cell phone bars toward the positive. And so I think that by being intentional around that particular rubric, those particular state standards, and really explicitly teaching that across our ELA curriculum, we've caused some real growth with our students. That was one area of focus for us because it is a very high leverage and high point value on the PSSA. So, and we weren't doing well. So we decided to focus intentionally on that. And we are seeing some preliminary results between Linkit Administration 1 and Linkit Administration 2. We're doing something similarly in math. We have homegrown this in math because Linkit doesn't provide us with the same kind of prompts that it does for TDA, but our math department has been very intentional about familiarizing students with the kind of reasoning that they are going to have to show on the open-ended responses in the PSSA, and then targeting their instruction toward that, and then when we give assessments in class, mimicking the language of the rubric and the construction of the questions for our students, and then assessing that with the students. And so even though we don't have formal standardized benchmarking data through Linkit, we have seen growth in that area also through the efforts of our math department. We have started to look at another system called Freckle, underneath where it says intervention there on the slides. We had a real heck of a time getting Freckle up and running for all of our students in 6th grade in the way that we wanted to. It is now up and running. It's just, if you're familiar with IXL or Khan Academy or some of these other adaptive things that we give students, it's another one of those that's tied to STAR assessments, so that Freckle informs STAR and STAR informs Freckle. So for the students who are behind grade level, we are looking to see if this is a useful tool in helping them to address the kinds of questions that they need to get better. We have looked at our flex groupings. We have flex periods every other day at the middle school in order to provide interventions, extensions, supports for kids. And we've been intentional about grouping students with an emphasis on math and ELA. And I think that we've talked about TDA quite enough, but I can talk more about that if you have questions. We're also looking at math, the way in which we roster students to our accelerated math programs at the middle school. Around now, we have been careful to accelerate every single student that we think could get an A or a B in an accelerated class. And we're rethinking that strategy and thinking about how can we be more I've used the word intentional a lot, but how can we be more thoughtful about how we group students and accelerate them? And how can we know if the students that we're accelerating are ready for the level of abstraction that they're going to encounter in math classes with names like algebra and geometry, rather than math classes with numbers like math 6, 7, and 8, where they could really get a nice foundation for things like ratios and proportions and fractions, which are still really difficult concepts for a lot of our students. And sometimes we accelerate them because they're good thinkers, but they may not be ready to encounter the kind of abstraction that you get in algebra. And so we really want to think about what do we take away from our students and our grade level math classes by accelerating too many kids too fast. So that's something that we're really thinking about. We think that that could be really beneficial as we think about the algebra scores on the Keystone in the high school as students move through our math program. So that's sort of an addition to everything else we're doing. How do we roster those classes and appropriately accelerate students? So that's what I have for you from the middle school. There's some things that we know we are improving over time on the Linkit benchmark. We think it's predictive of PSSA, but we won't know because it's new until we take the PSSA.
Dr. Fuller,
Yes.
any questions or comments for Dr. Fuller from our committee or from the team?
Dr. Johnson, I just want to make a comment, and I hear what Dr. Fuller is saying about looking intentionally at the math. I would tell you, for me as a parent, I think our math program in our school district is very strong, and it lends itself to students being exposed to things that maybe they wouldn't be exposed to other places. So I do think, like, on a whole look at it, but also like cautiously, I think it's a strength for us, the math program in our school district. That's my feeling. So
This is hugely used. It's an important point, and I think it's worthy of its own agenda item for a different day when when we have a more concrete proposal on how we'd like to move forward.
Right.
I think the challenge and the tension we have is there's two parts to this story that is what we're paying attention to. One is, how are we making sure that those students who are in grade level mathematics who are doing well are allowed to do well? And how are we, what decisions are we making about acceleration and what that actually means? For some students who are good at math but may not be math people, taking 2 named courses at the middle school level means they are not credit earning at the high school. And it puts them in a position to take certain courses that they may or may not want in order to fulfill a credit requirement when they get to the high school. So it's not a one or the other. It's how do we open it up so that we're looking at it through multiple windows, making sure that every doorway for a student is open, but that we've thought it through, and that we're in sort of in good research-based spaces about the decisions that we're making. And it's not arbitrarily, and I'm not saying that that's true, but like, we're just not accelerating to accelerate. We know why, we know what the outcome is, we know what we're looking for. So I think it's walking that hand in hand to be really thoughtful. And I think that's what Dr. Fuller sort of is alluding to, is can we articulate with clarity sort of the short and long-term impact of that acceleration?
And is the kind of acceleration that we're doing at the middle level appropriate, even though it's accelerated, right? Is another question I have. It may be so, but I'd like to take a look at it.
Right, and I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at it. I'm just sharing with all of you that I see our mathematics program as a strength of our district. It's not that I don't think that everything has the potential to be tweaked and looked at more carefully, and making sure what you're doing is in the best interest of all of the students.
I appreciate you keeping that at the forefront, right? Like, let's not mistakenly fix something that's not broken. Let's make sure we need to fix the thing that may need attention. So I appreciate that reminder. So thank you. Anything else for the middle schooler, Dr. Fuller?
I just wanted to add that I think that whole topic is a really interesting point, because I think that offering Algebra 1 and geometry at the middle school, as someone who took it, I took both of those as a middle schooler. I think it's like a great opportunity for students to excel in math and take more math courses in the high school. But I think it would definitely be interesting to hear more about that with what you're saying about excelling students who may not want to be at such a high level. But I also think that it's a very helpful thing that we offer, just giving students the opportunity to get those courses out of the way before they start high school.
Thanks, Olivia. I appreciate that. And it's nice to see you, and Ronan too.
I do think that Dr. Fuller and Dr. Rittenhouse and I will be back to this committee later in the spring with thoughts on sort of what's our mathematic thinking, and sort of having vetted it a little further. So we'll be back in touch about that, because I think it's an important topic and I think it's worthy of additional conversation. So thank you. Never least, often last, my friend, Dr. Chuck Rittenhouse, is going to wrap up this portion of our agenda speaking to us about the high school with his colleague and elbow buddy, Dr. Scragg.
Thank you. And thank you,
Gentlemen.
Olivia and Ronan. Thanks for being with us tonight here. Dinner time, 5:30, huh? So thank you. And thank you to everybody online. So they were our areas for growth, literature below pre-pandemic levels, algebra, which we're concerned about, still are concerned about, decreasing down to 10% the last 5 years. Bio scores have been steady, but a little bit under the pre-pandemic level, and AP tests we're really focusing on keystones this evening, but we were, really excited about our passing rate, participation rate, increasing our access by paying for it, and then going for the goal. If you remember the 3 different levels, for that, and we'll certainly they'll be taking those tests later in the spring, in April and May. So next, please. So you see some of our interventions: lunch and learn, keystone retakes, classroom instruction, data teams, benchmark testing in ELA, literature, and algebra, And if you look to the right, the update for winter 2024, we have lunch and learn once a week. The departments meet once a week for lunch and learn. So, if you're a teacher, you're helping students 4 days a week, and then you have departmental meetings, and we're going to start to go into those meetings to look at math, science, and English because I have some availability. At that time, it's the time we kind of hit pause, as we all know, during the day. All the departments produced action plans based on analysis of the data for ELA, for literature and algebra. We did our like the other buildings, our Linkit benchmark testing. Literature, there was no statistical change, meaning we were in about the mid-70s. We would always want to be in the mid-80s. We'd like to be at 100, but certainly in the mid-80s, and the times they took it, it kind of stayed the same. Biology, there was a statistical difference, as we went from Form A to B to C, where 50 went up to 83%, and Dr. Z and I think that may be linking it to the final exam, saying you're not just going to take Form C, but it could be part of the final exam grade, which I know the biology teachers, pushed for and kind of gave that as an incentive. And then algebra, our algebra scores are still of great concern. There was no real statistical change. Benchmark A, benchmark B, benchmark C for the ninth graders who took it in algebra, and that's a concern for the next 6 months. Here, we've been able to identify bubble students. Bubble students, that's a term that we use for students who are close. They could possibly retake that exam in May. And that's what Linkit calls it. They call them bubble students, and actually put that on the sheet that they would have the chance to pass. You may be like 3, 4, 5% below that cut score. Tutoring during lunch and learn, if anybody would like to be retaking that, because those scores are on the transcripts starting last year. And as Zach and I kind of use the same language for algebra examination of the current middle school and high school math sequencing and its impact on overall Keystone scores and student achievement. You see that last from the bottom there, and that was almost similar to Zach, to see what is happening, why our ninth grade algebra students not doing well on the Keystone exams. Is it something with sequencing? And like I said earlier, the algebra scores and courses are the main focus. Is the main focus of the remainder of the school year for me as the educational leader. We have semester courses, so some of the Keystone kids who took that about a month, 6 weeks ago, we now have second semester kids. We also have students who take full year algebra courses too, so they'll be taking the Keystones at the end of the year. So that is my winter update.
There we go. I could not get my button to unmute. There we go. Thanks, Dr. Rittenhouse. I do think it's important to clarify when we start talking about this algebra sequencing and things. I want to be clear with the members of this committee that we're not necessarily talking about taking away the opportunity to accelerate at the middle school. I think the question is, what are some of the barriers students are confronted with if they are not ready for algebra in middle school and take it in the high school? The outcomes that we have aren't what we would anticipate. And they're not in line with districts around us. So what do we need to do in our pacing and our selection and our support to ensure students are ready for that level of abstract thinking? Is there something we've missed? Is there something we haven't thought about? Is there something we can do differently? Is there support our teachers need? So I think when we talk about this, I don't want to be disingenuous. It's not only about those students who are taking algebra or geometry at the middle school. It's also looking at the students who are not taking those courses and what might we be doing differently to augment their readiness for abstract thinking and problem solving and analysis at the high school level when they arrived at the high school. Does that make sense? So it's a two-part of the coin. We have to do both things because we know we have high achievement of students who take algebra in the middle school, but those are students who are particularly good at mathematics. And so if you're not that and you don't take it at the middle school, what's happening? And what can we do to sort of get a different outcome and ensure that students are getting the opportunity to excel, whether they take the course at the middle school or the high school? There's not one right path for every kid, right? Okay. Dr. Rittenhouse, does that capture what was sort of our overall overarching sort of talking points?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Ritt?
So for clarification, we're not quite at the point in high school in terms of implementing a certain procedure or practice or anything like that. But what we are doing is investigating and looking at what we can do to address the problem that we're having with algebra. We definitely have large growth in biology and some slight change in literature, but the focus is going to be on algebra and what's working, not working, or the supports that may be needed in order to get that growth out of the students. Is that correct?
That is
That's
correct.
Excellent summary. Yep.
The
Correct.
deep dive into the data are the students who are having difficulty with algebra also had some performance issues on PSSAs in 7th and 8th grade. So it didn't come from nothing, right? So we have to sort of start to dig into those abstract components of the 7th and 8th grade. Is there a sequence in our curriculum that's just not aligned to help them get enough practice? Is it the fewer hours of instruction? Like what is it? Because otherwise we know them to be capable students, right? Like this isn't something where we think students aren't passing the classes. Eileen.
So I was just wondering, what kind of data do you get back from, I guess, the state or whoever administers the Keystones? Like when you say there's no change in things, like are there do they tell you like, boy, these areas as a whole of all the kids are missing this or missing that? Like when you're talking about how to fix it, do you know what's broke to know what to fix?
So we have a data warehousing system called Linkit, where our results are fed into that system and help us pull out areas of attention so we can see in every substrand of the standards where students were successful or not. And I think when Dr. Rittenhouse was mentioning earlier that he's got data teams in the math department, I think one of the things we're working towards is taking a look at that report and then making changes. The advantage or disadvantage is we are able to give Keystones twice a year to students who take it. So when we get these winter Keystones, we put some changes in place or some steps in place, right? During the fall semester, we tried some different things to address that. What did the results look like that come back from the winter administration, and what can we learn in preparation for the spring administration? So I think we're continuing to refine, looking at the data, figuring out where our strengths are, and then how might we continue to address that in systematic ways and chip away at improving that performance. It's not going to be a one fell swoop with my magic wand, although I did consider that. I feel like that was not as effective. So we're going to actually just dig in and go step by step, which will take us some time. And that's the part that's hard. We want it to be an overnight change, and that's just not reasonable or practical. Thank you. Dr. Chertoski, I see your hand raised.
Yeah. I just have I have two questions. One, the data in the middle of the slide, algebra, no statistical change. Is that 3%? And can you just explain what is that 3%? Is that 3% change? Is it 3% of our students pass? Like, what's that represent? Because I'm not sure.
These are with the Linkit benchmark that they're basic or below basic. They're not proficient. That only 3% are passing. That basically no student is passing. That they're basic or below basic.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and the basic's a pretty large group. I don't have it in front of me, but it's still basic. So it's still basic. So.
Okay. All right. So then the other, as you're digging into the data, I mean, I know that you've been looking at our demographic and racial groups, dividing them up and looking at their performance. Is there any pattern to the groups of students who are not performing at benchmark? Are we looking at kids that are on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum? Are we looking at our students in special education? Are they standing out as being a big part of this group? Or do we not know yet? I mean,
Dr. Rittenhouse, Dr.
Yeah.
Scraggis?
So I'll say for for algebra, like I said, that it's because of its level, it's because it's so low. There's no demographics, because if it's 15 kids, I think on the one we were looking at earlier today, there was 15 or 18 kids, and it was the one was proficient and 14 weren't proficient. So so there really was no really necessary analysis. And I think, like I said, I think it's us really looking, and Dr. Taratas, it's a great question, is looking to kind of see what what we're teaching in the classes. Are we touching like Dr. Johnson said, are we touching the spots that we need to go to? Meaning, are we hitting the curriculum that we're targeting? And Eileen mentioned that too, and are we also covering the material that we need to cover? We have some some of our students in a year-long algebra course, and we're hoping that they do well at the end of the year when they take it in May. They haven't obviously taken it yet because they haven't completed the course, but it's really kind of looking to see what we do in our ninth grade math and math class.
mm-hmm. Okay.
Dr. Yannico?
Thanks, Dr. Johnston. I just wanted to sort of summarize with regard to math instruction, because we've talked about this since I arrived in the district, and I think long before that. Historically, the district has done very well on standardized assessments with regard to literature and science. Science has always been our highest overall performance from elementary school through to high school on standardized assessments. Over the last few years, post-pandemic, there has been a national, a state, and a local trend in algebra keystone scores and algebra PSSA or math PSSA scores being lower nationwide. But in particular, on the PSSA and on the keystone algebra, scores statewide have plummeted. And this is an area of concern for administrators and, frankly, math educators across the state, because we're not sure exactly what's going on, why algebra performance on these standardized assessments is so much lower. And so when Dr. Johnston and Dr. Fuller were speaking earlier about middle school performance and acceleration, we know that we have very high success rates with students like Olivia, who take algebra and or geometry in the middle school and then are able to access all of the math core courses and electives at the high school, all the way up through multivariate calculus, AP statistics, AB and BC calculus. So for a significant percentage of our students, and I think, Mrs. Hubley, that's why you have that impression that we are a very strong math program. For students for whom math is a talent or where there's a strong interest, students do very well and have fantastic options at the secondary level in order to accelerate and really explore and dive in. In the last few years, post-secondary institutions have highlighted the importance of students taking statistics rather than the more traditional accelerated course of AB and then BC calculus and then perhaps multivariable calculus and the like. And many of our students have taken advantage of that. Our AP statistics enrollment has skyrocketed in the last few years. Where we are trying to put some emphasis is on the roughly 40% of our students, 40 to 50% of our students who do not access that algebra curriculum at the middle level because they're not ready. And as they reach the high school, we're finding that they are really struggling with the Keystone assessment in algebra, and we don't know why. The percentages are very, very low. When we get to graduation rates and we look at the Future Ready Index, our overall pass rate on the Keystone algebra is very high because of that percentage of students who score very, very well when they take the test in middle school. But for students who are not quite ready, and that's fine. They're on grade level. They're not behind,
Right.
they're on grade level. When they reach algebra at the high school, we're finding that many of those students are scoring basic rather than proficient, not so much below basic. We have a relatively small percentage scoring below basic, but we have a significant percentage who are either on the bubble, as Dr. Rittenhouse mentioned, or who are basic. And what we're trying to look at is, what do we need to do to try to build stronger confidence, engagement, interest in mathematics, and aptitude for that group of students? And how can we then engage them beyond algebra at the high school in math electives that are of interest to them? And so that's really where the team at the secondary level is trying to do some work. And concurrently, we're asking the state to look at, why are we seeing statewide dropping scores in algebra? It's a concern for the state. It's also a national trend. There was recently an article in Education Week about this very topic, and that was K-12 math instruction and K-12 performance on standardized assessments. So I hope that sort of summarizes for everybody what we're looking at and why we're looking at it.
Thanks, Dr. Yannicone. I think that just to sort of wrap up this section of the agenda is really to say, like, these are the things we talk about every day, all day, and trying to continue to enhance the educational outcomes for all the students who come to school here. We're not fine with some doing well and some not doing well, right? Like, we're poking at it one day at a time, trying to find those pathways to make sure that students have every option open to them after they leave high school that they would like to have open. So we're going to keep up that work. To do some of that, we're going to take a look at our spring benchmark testing. And then, of course, we have our, as was alluded to earlier, we're in standardized testing season, it's about to begin. We want to continue to look at those patterns. We've tried some new things. We've added some new structures and supports. How are they resonating or working? And then ultimately taking a look at, where are we still seeing some struggles, and how might that focus our professional learning and our opportunities for needs, curriculum writing or otherwise, this summer. Okay. I appreciate our building principals being here with us this evening. I am going to excuse them for the remainder of the agenda unless they would like to stay. I mean, obviously they are welcome to be here amongst us, but if they would like to leave, this is the perfect opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to walk down to senior night. We're playing Cheltenham tonight, the girls. So I'm going to go.
Thanks, Dr. Ritt.
All right. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hi, good night.
Meanwhile, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so that Dr. Lutz can share hers. And while she's doing that, I'm just going to provide a little overview. School districts have wonderful opportunities to submit required plans to this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to the Department of Education. As you know, earlier this year, we submitted our comprehensive plan, and right on its heels is our Act 339 plan, which is our school counseling plan. So Dr. Lutz and her team have been working on this. She's presenting it here this evening for you, because we will then need to place a board motion at our next board meeting for public posting for 30 days for public comment and review, in order to then submit it to the Department of Ed. So she is here as a part of that opportunity. Dr. Lutz, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's actually saying I cannot share my screen. It's giving me an
Mr.
error
McHugh,
message.
can you help her? I thought we had that worked out.
Stand by.
It's saying it's not a permission. It's saying that it's
Well,
giving me an error message on my end.
are you okay for
So-
me just to share it from my end?
I just sent you the presentation. If you could do that,
Okay.
please.
Give me 1 second.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
You want to just start talking a little bit about how your process got started with your
Sure.
team? And I'm going to
Sure.
get that open for you.
So good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for having me here tonight. For those that might have entered after our introductions, I'm Michelle Lutz. I'm the Director of Support Services for the district. So I work very closely with our school counselors team. This is our K through 12 guidance plan, is what you will see this listed as when it comes through and when it gets posted to the website. Guidance is kind of an outdated word that our school counselors shake their heads at, because they're school counselors. They do so much more than guidance. But I'm really glad that I'm here with you tonight because we are actually in the midst of celebrating National School Counseling Week. So this is a perfect time to showcase everything that our school counselors do to help prepare students for their post-secondary lives. And so on the next slide, I want you to know that this is a draft plan that you're going to see, but it was actually co-authored by our amazing counselor team. They really took the time to dig into some of the prior work that we've done in terms of submitting our plans and also looking at our current district practices and procedures that we go through, a lot of our documents, and we wanted to ensure that they're aligned to the new Act 333 Career Education and Work, or CEW standards. So they really dug into that. I want to thank Kathleen Doherty, who could not be here tonight, but she is our lead counselor for the district, and she was instrumental in pulling the team together and getting them to focus in on a lot of this work. So this is a 3-year plan. It is aligned with our comprehensive school plan that you heard from Dr. Johnston earlier this year. You'll remember that that's a mammoth plan that really talks about everything that we do here in the district. This plan really focuses on how we provide our students access to career, work, and college-ready activities from the time that they walk it through the doors in kindergarten all the way up through post-graduation when we actually contact students and survey what are they doing now that they've graduated. It really is a joint effort just because of how many areas it touches. And so there's a lot of work that happens in the Office of Teaching and Learning. There's work that happens with our counseling team. There's a lot of work within our special ed department to make sure that individual needs are being met. But at the end of the day, what we're really looking at is creating a roadmap forward for how students are getting access to appropriate information in their grade levels to help them learn about all of the different post-secondary options that there are available to them out there, and getting to work with some of those things and learn about them so that they're ready to go out into the world and contribute. One of the activities that we undertake as part of this process is making sure that our counseling mission is aligned to what we are actually doing here in the district. And our school counselors are really passionate about the fact that they work in 3 very distinct areas. They're helping students with their academic development. So they're providing ideas for them for what courses they might want to take, or they're working with families to help students become successful learners. What do they need to do at home or outside of school or within the school building to help them really grow and become students who have successful strategies? The other area is obviously working in personal and social development. And then finally, what you're hearing as the main part of this plan is really that career development. And so these are the areas that we use to drive this work for our counseling team. So from kindergarten through graduation, our students have access to a wide variety of activities, lessons, and experiences that really help support them to make good post-secondary choices. Whether it's making some digital music in elementary school using the latest and greatest technology, if it's visiting local landmarks to learn about the unique history of Pennsylvania and the city of Philadelphia, or even a lot of our students are able to complete work study as they enter the high school and earn credits for the things that they're doing outside of school that they're passionate about. Our students really have access to a wide variety of career exploration opportunities. And then throughout their educational journey, our students also have the opportunity to learn about college and technical school options. And that includes our district's partnership with Eastern. That's a large part of this plan, And it's also part of Eastern's plan that they will ultimately submit to the state, is talking about how we work in tandem to make sure that our students know about Eastern's programs and have access to those programs. Okay? And then finally, as students enter into the high school, they get to work individually with their counselors so that they can talk about those next steps after high school. So the K through 12 guidance plan requires that we document all of the actions that we're taking in a variety of areas. So when the plan comes out, you'll see a lot of attachments to the plan that we really worked through. To that end, our counselors have been offering monthly activities at all grade levels to make sure that students are aware of the different options out there. So that may be something as simple as, parents coming in and talking about their careers through a career day. Our middle school takes time to take a virtual tour of Eastern, and a lot of our students at the high school take an actual tour of Eastern and get to learn different opportunities. So it's a great way to keep thinking about career-minded activities that are going on throughout the school year that offer students that authentic experience of what careers and post-secondary life may look at. They also align all of this work to PA standards. We have a very carefully constructed document that shows all of the areas that we need to hit and how those align to all of the areas across the district. Anytime that we're doing this work, we look at that profile of a graduate and how we can embed authentic experiences into our learning environment. And so our counselors are constantly looking at where can students do things that they're passionate about, where can they do things that help them enhance what they ultimately want to do in life. And so that's part of this plan as well, is making sure that students have access to a wide variety of career options and that they know exactly what they're going to need to do post-secondary in order to enter those careers. And then finally, just providing that support, whether it's applications to Eastern, applications to colleges. There's a lot of different things that our counselors are helping students complete as they, head towards graduation. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that all of this is in addition to the role that our counselors play in supporting student mental health. So while they are working diligently to support these college and career planning activities through Act 339 and the CEW work, we also know that national statistics align with what we know that counselors are doing every single day in our schools, and that's helping to support student mental health. We have a lot of counseling time that is used to either provide classroom lessons or small group work. They're attending meetings, they're supporting students who are in crisis, they're conducting suicide and threat assessments, providing restorative practices. And so we just want to make sure that, our counselors have the space to do the mental health work that they need to do, but also to help our students as they get ready to transition from year to year and make sure that they're making good decisions about what they want to do for career and beyond. So the next steps of the plan are that as we move from the draft, which will be sent to everyone so that they can review it, and then it will ultimately be uploaded to the state. We want to make sure that we have a living plan that actually works for our district and our students. And so the next steps for us is to really take a look at some of those embedded CEW artifacts and make sure that they're further aligned with the profile of a graduate work so that all of it culminates in students having to do projects that make sense for them, but align with the district mission and goals. And so some of that work has already started to take place. We've been having preliminary conversations with principals and counselors on how we can do this, how we can make it more authentic. And so we're really excited about how this will take shape over the next 3 years as we work on this plan. So I want to take this opportunity to really thank our school counseling teams. At Enfield, we have Myra Ramos Cook. She works with our K-2 students and has a lot of great ideas that she uses to instill really great beliefs in the kids about what they can do. Because as we know, K-2 kids are dreamers. And so they're open to the possibility of anything. And so she really works to hone that through her CEW work. Monica Kenyon is our Erdenheim counselor, and she does a fabulous job of making sure that students feel like they're supported as they further explore career options and start to take shape as students in what they really want to do. Our middle school team, Stephanie De Los Santos, Kristen Hayden, and Kathleen Darty, work really hard to make sure that kids are supported during those transition years, both from a mental health perspective and in really embedding a lot of that career and post-secondary work into everything that they do. They start talking about colleges, they start talking about career pathways, they start talking about career possibilities with their students. They do a lot of small group work to make sure that students feel like they belong and that they're connected to our school. And then obviously a shout out to our high school team, Elizabeth Barbone, Beth McDonald, and Bill Shear. You know, they have our students as they head into the end, and, you know, they are writing recommendations. They're making sure that students are signed up for the appropriate tests. They're giving them information about college, whether they want to go into the military, whether they're looking at vocational options. Our counselors do a terrific job of pointing students in the direction of jobs that they might be interested in, things that they can get into now that may grow into a career. And that's also in addition to the work that they're doing, seeing students every single day, streaming into their office for scheduling changes, you know, friendships that break up or make up, things like that. So, you know, our school counseling team is always busy, and we're grateful for all of the work that they do with our students. And now more than ever, as it is National School Counselor Week. So I'll put that plug in again. Any questions on our K-12 guidance plan?
Thanks, Dr. Lutz. I know it's a really comprehensive plan, and the presentation doesn't do justice to the amount of hours and work it took you and your team to really think through these in really careful ways. And I know that I am grateful, along with Dr. Yannicone, for your leadership with your team. I know that they feel really supported by your leadership, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Lutz? Why I changed screens? Do I have out of here? Back. Okay. I need like 5 more minutes, and then we're going to sort of just go through sort of the final item on the agenda. Is really foreshadowing to what's coming in March. It is that time of the year in the spring where I ask us to meet a little more often because things are fast and furious. As you know from my email that went out to us families this week, we are busy in our curriculum office trying to get some projects completed that have been that are heavy lifts and exciting, really exciting for our students and our families and our teachers. We are in the process of K-5 ELA adoption, middle school science resource adoption, and high school biology demonstrations on particular products. They've been going through everything we can put our hands on to find the thing that's the best for our students, and helping them to acquire the skills and abilities that align to our profile of a graduate. So we anticipate bringing that to you with recommendations next month, probably in early March. The high school team will also be with me again in March to talk about possible electives that they would like to add to the course guide. So we'll be back to talk about that. And then I'm just letting you know, I have not yet dug into or have dealt with, but PDE, in a surprise to us all, launched 3 new projects that were unexpected. And so as we do, we're going to roll with it, but we have brand new standards on career education and work, economics, family and consumer sciences, and personal finance. So that has some unanticipated changes we're going to need to make to our program, really looking at what to do with that. So that will take up some time this spring and into the summer as we bring forward some recommendations over that time period to this group and then ultimately to our board. Questions about any of that? It really was an FYI item, but when I ask you to meet again in a month, I didn't want you to be surprised. Which gets us to our next question, which is finding a common meeting date. So offline, I'm going to send out an email to the 4 members of our school board to try to figure out morning, afternoon, evening, and day of the week that might work best for us. Mondays comes with complications. Tuesdays comes with some complications. So hopefully we can find a day and a time that works for the 4 of you, Dr. Yannicone, and our student representatives. So we'll get that on the books going forward. Is that okay with everybody to do that offline? I do believe we had some public participants, so I want to open it up to public comment in case there's any comment from our public. Hearing none. Final-
Dr. Johnston,
Yes.
just point of clarification for me as the tech guy. I
Yeah.
have enabled the raise hand feature. Do you need me to allow anybody to speak?
Only if the hand is raised.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Final comments from the committee members? Anything to wrap up this evening's meeting?
Well, thank you for a very thorough report, both reports. We're moving forward in the district. I just wanted to know, so this will be the first report that we saw will be presented at the next board meeting, correct? In full as we saw it, and then also will be available for parents to on the website, is that correct?
You said the first presentation. Dr. Yannicone's nodding her head, yes. I don't think we were anticipating presenting the academic update.
No, I just wanted to, I thought, Ms. Green, that you meant that as the chair, you will summarize this on the board agenda on the 20th, but no, we were not intending to present. We typically do 1 data presentation a year for the public, and that's in the fall. Once we get all the spring and summer data reports, we put that out in the fall.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on what parents will see at the next meeting, and you answered the question. Thank you, and I will be prepared to present.
Absolutely. And Dr. Johnston just yesterday released her first newsletter. And so, you know, in the future, there may be further information that we share as we feel it's necessary for the community.
We'll try to find some different vehicles and opportunities for families to know what we're doing behind the scenes. I do think Ms. Green, just as a FYI, I'm happy to do a draft of some notes from this evening and send it over to you for your review and editing, if that's helpful.
Thank you, that is helpful. And I just have one other question. Is there anything, and I probably or may have missed it, there are a lot of different acronyms and et cetera in the reports. Do we have any kind of something
glossary
that says this means PLC means this, or this means that, so that it may be clearer to them as we're moving through reports exactly what the terms mean that are easy for us. We know them because we work in education, but parents may not.
We did that in the last one, but I neglected to do it this time, so we will try to be mindful of that. I've been on Dr. Yannicone about this a lot lately, being mindful myself and her, trying to edu-speak and instead make it sort of accessible to everyone. So we're both helping each other. So I appreciate the reminder very much. Any other comments from our committee?
I just want to thank Dr. Lutz for putting the comprehensive counseling plan together. I understand how much work that takes, and so I appreciate the information that you shared about the district and our services. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Teretesky. It's a pleasure to see all of you. I know we always appreciate your support and your authentic encouragement and feedback. So along with our student members, I think this is a really effective opportunity for us to really look at important topics. And today's evening was indicative of sort of why I like this committee so much, because it really helps us to do our best work and keeps us moving forward, which I'm excited about for all of us. So I appreciate your time and attention. Have a fantastic rest of your evening. And with your okay, Ms. Green, I'm going to conclude our meeting for this evening.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Take care.
Thanks for being here.